Luke, a special video for you. I see that you're doing some tough stuff because there's a lot of fractions thrown in. It's not that bad if you don't have to deal with fractions, but it looks like your teacher likes to work with fractions. So just going through this quiz real quick, and you could pause this as needed or just rip through it like I am. The slope formula given a line, it's just your rise over run or your change in y over the change in x. I'm not sure exactly how they want you to word that, but that would be when you're given a line, you're just counting how much it goes up. We'll use these examples later on. From this point to this point, it's how much it goes up, the rise over the run, or the change in your y values, and the change over the change of your x values. So that would be what you're looking at for number one. Number two, the slope formula given coordinates. So when you're given coordinates, you're going to label them, and I'll do that as we go forward. Your y sub 2 minus your y sub 1 over your x sub 2 minus your x sub 1. And remember, the letter m is referring to slope. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. This is your slope. The b part is your y-intercept. And then point slope form is going to be y minus y sub 1 equals the slope, or m. And then in parentheses, you have your x minus x sub 1. So let's move forward with this. We'll use these formulas throughout this quiz. Find the slope of the line that passes through each pair of points. So I always label my points. Okay, so x1, y1, x2, y2. Then I write my formula from up there. And I'm going to figure out my point. So I take my y2 minus my y1, so 2 minus 5. And then I take my x2 minus my x1, my 6 minus the 4. And you end up getting negative 3 over 2. And that's my slope, negative 3 over 2. If you mix up these, that's okay. You could actually mix them up. I could actually go, and I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be telling you this, but just FYI, if I went y1 minus y2, that would be 5 minus 3. Or 5 minus 2, I'm sorry. 5 minus 2 is 3. And then I did 4 minus 6, as long as I keep in the same order. Like, notice I went y1 minus y2, and then I went x1 minus x2. 4 minus 6 is negative 2, so you still have negative 3 over 2. It's still even though the negative's down here, it's still, you just put the negative in front of the whole fraction, it's still a slope of negative 3 over 2. So if you do mix these up, as long as you put them in the right order, if it's easier for you to do them a different way, that's fine. But I mean, sticking with the rule of the formula, y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1, I'm going to continue to do that. Okay, moving forward, this one, it's really easy. Your slope is 3. It's just listed right there for you. And your y-intercept is negative 5. Because it says minus 5, so your y-intercept is negative 5. Okay, I notice I labeled for number 7, your x1, y1, x2, y2. I had to figure out the slope, and you can kind of see how I did that. So negative 2 minus this 2, negative 2 minus that 10. I did it backwards too, just to double check. Sometimes I'll do it like y1 minus y2, x, like I explained up here, just to see, and you get the same answer. It's 1/3. And because I didn't like dealing with 1/3 once I got down here, because 1/3 of 10, then you get 3 and 1/3, and it gets kind of ugly. I can see why this quiz is a bit of a bummer, because you're working with so many fractions. There are easier problems with that you're not dealing with fractions, but I guess your teachers force or getting you guys to work with fractions a lot more. So okay, that's why it could be difficult. I wanted to show you this point slope form. I used the 2 here, and here I used the 10. My y1 and x1, and because I already had them labeled x1 and y1, okay? Then I went ahead and I added 2 to both sides, so it becomes plus 2 over here. I used the distributive property, then just bring this down, and then I combine these like terms. And now it's in slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. This is my y-intercept. It intercepts it at a negative below the origin, negative 1 1/3. Okay? So I did it over here also just to show you that it doesn't matter which x, y coordinates you work with. Sometimes it's easier to work with a different set of coordinates because they're just easier numbers. The 2's may have been easier. This becomes plus 2 because it's, a minus a negative becomes plus, minus a negative becomes plus from this formula that we're using from at the top of the page, the point slope form. So in working this out, you end up getting the same answer. Just showing you it doesn't really matter which pair you use, as long as you name one of them x1, y1. This could be my x1, y1. They're going to get the same answer because they're on the same line. And this is the equation of that line, just to show you. Okay. I'm sure your teacher has talked about that before. Okay, so write an equation of a line in point slope form through the given point and with the given slope. This is real easy. Here's my point slope formula. I just plug in my y1 and I labeled it. Notice I always label it my x1. Make sure that looks like an x. x1, y1. And here's my slope. And so I just put my y1 there, I put my x1 there, and I put my slope there, and I'm done. It didn't tell me to go on to to slope-intercept form. It just said point slope form, so I stopped there. This one, of course, we have to go all the way through. It wants us to go all the way to slope-intercept form. So I have to first figure out the slope. So I have to do the y2 minus y1 over the x2 minus x1, okay? So I took 3 minus a negative 2, so 3 plus 2. Then I took a 5 minus a negative 3, which is 5 plus 3. And I ended up with 5/8 as my slope. Then I go into the equation and I plug in my slope, and then my y1 was a negative 2, so minus a negative 2 is plus 2. And my x1 was a negative 3, so minus a negative 3 is a plus 3. Then I went and I subtracted 2 from both sides, so that cancels out over here. That's why I did it. And I have my plus 2 over here. You see it down here. Then I used the distributive property. 5/8 times 3, and you could just do that on your calculator, and you get 1 7/8. I added these two, and then you get y equals 5/8 x plus 3 7/8. 2 plus 1 is the 7/8. If you're not sure how to get those I think the problem with this test is so many fractions. I don't like that, But anyways. How you would do this 5/8 times 3. I put it in parentheses because sometimes there's a negative in front of it, and the negative, if you don't put it in parentheses on your calculator, it doesn't take the negative. I know there's no negative here, but I still just do parentheses. You could do one of two ways. You could do 5 ABC 8 5/8 back parentheses and multiply that by, or multiplying it by a positive 3. And you just put a 3 outside it. And you hit equals, and you get 1 7/8. Your calculator just looks like that if you're using the TI-30X. It just ends up like that. You could do it that way, using the ABC button, or you could do it this way. 5 divided by 8, because a division problem is a fraction. A fraction is a division problem, I should say. And then back parentheses, and then multiply that by 3, hit equals, and the only bad part is you're going to get that as a decimal. And I mean, you could work with a decimal, that's fine, but I did it the ABC way to keep it a fraction, okay? Because we have a fraction here. I don't like mixing fractions with decimals, but that is 1 7/8 just as a fraction. All right, So that's that. This is the end. This is your in slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. Okay. So there's your slope-intercept, or y-intercept, sorry, and then there's your slope. Number 10. So you had to do a lot with this one too. I made the tickets, the number of tickets be the x, and I named the price, the cost, as your y's. So you have your x1, y1, x2, y2. You figure out your slope was 7.5. Took my y2 minus my y1, x2 minus my x1, make that look like an x. Okay, and then I went back in and I used this slope, 7.5, and I plugged in my y1 and I plugged in my x1 here. And you end up getting, when you use the distributive property, negative 22.5 and a plus 22.5. Those, equal 0, so you're just left with, and this is a direct variation, I don't know if you're going over that yet, but y equals 7.5x. So each ticket just costs $7.50. And without doing all that work, you could have figured that out by just taking 22.5 divided by 3. And you could have taken 52.5 divided by 7, and you would have gotten $7.50. So, I don't know, but that's a lot of work. So hopefully you pause that. These, to graph these, you have to work them out. You have to put them in slope-intercept form first. So you can see that I did that first one here. I subtracted 1 from both sides. I did the distributive property and then combined like terms. -6 minus 7, or -6 minus 1 is -7. Okay, and then I did the same thing for number 12. I added 4 to both sides. I distributed the negative. So this becomes -x and this becomes a -2. -2 plus 4 is a +2. And so now that these are in slope-intercept form, now I can graph them. So let's take a look at these as graphs. Number 11, your y-intercept is -7. So I have to make sure I go below the origin 7. And the slope is 3. That means it's up 3 over 1, up 3 over 1, up 3 over 1. You only need 2 points really to make a line, but I did a whole bunch of them, so your graph should look a little bit like that. Number 12, now I can graph it because it's in slope-intercept form. My y-intercept is +2, so I go above the origin on the y-axis +2, and this is just minus 1x, so minus 1 is 1 over 1. So minus 1 means going down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, and just connect those points. 13 is all set for you. Your y-intercept is -2. So I go below the origin 2, and I'm going down 3. So that means, I put this over 1 because -3 over 1 is -3. So that means, because I got to know my rise over the run. Remember that number 1 we did on this quiz. So it goes down 3 over 1. In order to get the previous one, I go back 1 and up 3 because I always read a graph from left to right. So I'm going down 3 over 1, okay, to get that previous point. Sometimes you have to get the previous point because it won't fit on the graph that's given. And then this one, you have a -5 as your y-intercept. So I go below the origin 5. And I have -4/5. So I'm going down 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 over 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Boom. And I could just plot my point. I went back 5 and up 4 because from this point to this point, I'm going down 4 over 5 because you always read it from left to right. That would be the previous point for that line. And then lastly, an easy one, you just go to +2 on the y-axis. This is the y-axis, x-axis. Okay, and so I'm at +2, and I went the wrong way, so good thing I'm looking at this again. I went down 1 over 2. I didn't realize I did that. So it's up 1 over 2. So from this point, I go up 1 over 2. Up 1 over 2. So not a very straight line, but it'll do. So it should be going up. Don't pay attention to that one going down. All right, hopefully this helps, and good luck with the rest of your algebra.